Hello, Offworld fans. Welcome. Today, I just want to talk a little bit about reveal map and picking a good settling spot. I've seen that some people are struggling to find a good spot to settle, and even how to quantify that spot. So we're going to have a quick look at a couple of maps, and I'll give you my opinion on them. So let's get straight into it. Oh, chaos terrain. That's going to be interesting. Very interesting, it would seem. Right. Let's just pause it there for a minute. You will see on reveal map that there is a starting debt ticker. So if we settle now, we're going to take on 150k's worth of debt. I can't recommend settling this early. Sometimes you'll want to settle early. Depending on the map, depending on the setup, I mean, you could settle anywhere from 40k right down. You could take a bonus of maybe 2 or 3,000k when the debt ticker goes past naught and starts going into positive territory. There are going to be various bonuses for settling at various times. If you settle, say, third out of 4 players, you will usually get some starting cash. Watch the debt ticker, because if there's a lot of different good spots on the map that you don't mind taking, maybe something that's not as good as, or something that's still good, still workable, but you could take a bonus, maybe $3,000 to start with. Which, I mean, $3,000 in your pocket plus your starting cash is going to give you a very good start. In some cases, it may be an instant upgrade. So there's various trade-offs. I mean, the earlier you settle, the longer it's going to take for you to get to access the black market, which sometimes you don't mind not going to the black market. Sometimes you want to go to the black market earlier. Maybe you'll want to buy a cheap claim. It all depends. There will be extra claims available. I believe at level, if you settle thirds out of 4 people, you're going to get an extra claim. I think it's HQ level 3. If you settle last, you're going to get a extra claim at HQ level 2. And of course, depending where you settle, when you settle on the ticker, you may well get some extra starting cash. But if it's a bad map, then maybe you're going to want to settle early so that you can pick up that better spot, because a good spot is going to set you up really well for the rest of the game. So what we'll do is we'll settle immediately. Press control and settle immediately. And straight away you can see, because I've settled so early, I'm in a D bond rating. So I've got no access to the black market. Let's just pause the game there. And my share price is basically half of everybody else's. So settling early is probably not recommended. So just pause the game at the moment so we can have a little look around the map. I would suggest, as soon as the game begins, go to the colony, hover over it and see what it's consuming. We can see here it's consuming 1 unit of power, 0.5 of water, 0.75 of food and 2.5 of oxygen. So what that tells us is that power is going to spike quite quickly. As soon as everybody else settles and gets their buildings down, power consumption is going to go up, plus the usage of the colony. It's going to be quite high, so you want to be thinking that you want to move into power reasonably quickly. You'll notice that the resources would have been displayed. I think we can toggle these back. There we go. We can see that on this map there's 4 geothermals. Water is average, it's not great, it's not terrible. Plenty of aluminium around, plenty of iron, very little carbon. There's just 1 medium carbon on this map. So found in scavengers, probably not going to be an option for us today. Silicon, well, there's 1 medium silicon and 7 smaller ones. And they are spread about a little bit. There's some over here. So silicon is going to be a rarer resource. So that's another thing to consider. Where are there monopolies to be had? I mean, sometimes there'll be an aluminium monopoly, and if you can bag that monopoly, you're going to make some good money. And of course you're going to disadvantage your opponents because there is no aluminium, easy aluminium for them to take, or there's no, yeah. So these are all things that you should think about. Perhaps this map isn't the best map to use. Well, maybe it is a good map to use as an example, because I'm only seeing a few good spots. By good spots, I mean, well, let's see now. This down here, I think, is probably the better spot. Scientific is going to be a hard HQ type to take on this map because there's no large water patches. It's going to be very difficult to make scientific work on this map, just like it's going to be very difficult to get scavenger to work on this map. So I think we should discount scavenger and discount scientific. Really, I think that expansive and robotics are going to be very strong on this map. Robotics don't need as much aluminium as other HQs do, so they can get away with maybe not taking aluminium and buying it from the market. And they don't need any kind of water resources for life support anyway. They would need water for building food or reactors. So probably a very viable spot would to be go for a robotic HQ in this area here. You settled adjacent to this high and medium irons, and you could get an iron mine down and a couple of steel mills, and later on you could add another iron mine if you like. There's also some easy to take high waters here, so you could go robotic and take water in, make some food or put some reactors down. Be quite viable. There's also this little area here which you could put some wind turbines in if you wanted to. You could put them up here. So for a robotic, then this would be quite a nice spot. You could also go robotic maybe in this area, but again you're going to be very sure it's probably not advisable because you've got no room to expand your base. Everything's going to be quite tight. And of course the other robotic spot would probably be somewhere here. So I would say this would be, here would probably be your primary spot that you'd be wanting to get, and then if you couldn't or didn't get that spot, you could probably move over to here. Worst case, you could go here, or of course down here. This may be a preferred spot for you. Easy access to aluminium, a lot of high aluminium around here. The iron's not as good, but if you've got 2 iron mines down, you could support your steel mills quite easily. And of course, dry ice. Dry ice is perhaps underused. It'll give you carbon and oxygen from putting down some ice condensers. So this could also be a very, very viable spot as well. I would possibly like to take expansive maybe somewhere in this area. You could stomp on all this. The other thing is, if you settle on top of resources, those resources are going to be automatically harvested and added to your stockpile. So if you started here, then you could start with quite a lot of aluminium if you put a expansive HQ down here. Also, you'd be next to the geothermal, and expansive HQs get geothermals cheap, so you only have to pay half the amount of steel for them. So the only consideration, well, the only problem I suppose would be water. You're going to have to ship your water in a long way. That's the other point I think it's important to talk about, is shipping resources. If you go and settle somewhere remote, you are going to have to ship resources in. So for an expansive HQ, you're going to have to ship water in. I mean, maybe you take these 2 waters, but then you're shipping it all this way. Not too bad for expansive, because you get half price blimps or double speed blimps, so you're only paying half the fuel, but it's still a long way. It's still got to factor into your calculations that you're going to be paying fuel for all of this, and you're going to be shipping a lot of water. and possibly you're going to be shipping a lot of water that's not that valuable. So would this make a good expansive? It would be okay, but you've got to think about shipping in your resources. The other thing is, where can I get silicon from? Where can I get carbon from? Well, there's no carbon on this map, so your carbon will be coming from dry ice. So again, it's going to be difficult to get an expansive in here. This is really a kind of robot map, to be perfectly honest with you. So I would rate this spot as a top spot. With robotic, you can afford to take on a little bit of settling debt. So you'd probably want to settle this spot at maybe 20, minus 20,000, if you wanted to be sure of getting it. Otherwise, somebody else will come and snap it up, I'm sure. So there we go. That's this map, I think, doodle done. Not a great map, a tricky map. It really narrows your options down. Okay, let's have a look. Let's see where the AI is going to settle. I would imagine.
A robotics HQ has been founded.
There we go. The AI is not that stupid.
A robotics HQ has been founded.
Let's take an expansive here. Well, that's a brave move. Again, they're going to have to ship in. They will take an aluminium. They're going to be shipping their aluminium in a long way. That's going to be expensive. It's going to be difficult for them to repurpose these tiles. Of course, any tiles around your base could be repurposed at a later point. Anything that you go and take out here, unless you've got teleportation, is going to be difficult. There we go. That's my thoughts on that map. Let's have another map, see if we can't find a better map. Okay, this one's going to be craters. So a crater map I'm expecting to see a lot of carbon on. Again, starting decks, tick tock, tick tock. So what we'll do is we just bag an expansive sieve and we'll just put him there out of the way. Okay, looking at this colony, it's a Chinese colony, so it's going to have a lot of warehouses on it. So therefore, it's going to need it's going to need glass. It's going to consume a lot of glass. Let's have a quick look. Glass consumption is 0.1 at the moment. Oxygen, food, and water.
A robotics HQ has been founded.
So, whenever you see warehouses, you need to be thinking medium to long term to get into glass. And obviously glass needs as its input silicon. So this, silicon, wow, I've not seen one of those for a very long time. You've got an iron and a silicon, that's very nice. And the other silicons are spread, 1, 2, and a single there. So getting your hands on this silicon tile is going to be pretty important. It's going to be very important. One thing I didn't touch on the last map was the black market. After looking at what the colony is doing, what resources are going to, at least short term, be in big demand, you need to look at the black market. If there are nukes, then you really want to be careful with rare resources, because other players will see your rare silicon and iron tile and say, we don't want you to have that, and they will bring a nuke down on top of it, take it from a high down to a low. I mean, this would be a perfect candidate for nuking. I'm sure if this was on a map with high level players and there were nukes on the black market, this would be nuked pretty swiftly. So because this crater map, it's going to tend towards being scavenger friendly, but there is no point taking a scavenger HQ if you can't get reasonable access to water. Again, as I was touched on the last map, you're going to pay fuel for shipping stuff in. So if you're too far away from water, you're going to be shipping a lot of water, and your fuel bill is going to be high, very high. So you'd be quite tempted, I'm sure, to come and settle in this area here, because look at all this lovely carbon. That would be a lovely little crater. But you've only got one high water close. The other waters because you don't want to just take one high water. You're going to want a high and a medium together minimum. I mean, if there's a medium water there and the high there, I mean, that would be perfect. Easy access to some aluminium here. A couple of highs over here if you wanted to take them. So I mean, I definitely go for scavenger here. Perfect. If there was a little bit more water. I mean, this may well turn out to be the best spot on the map anyway, but just need to think about it a little bit. Here we got some double tiles again. This would be a nice little location, because you can always swap out your aluminium to carbon, or if you've got too much carbon it goes cheap, you can swap it back to aluminium. So those are useful tiles, very useful. It gives you choices. It means you don't have to spend claims on too many different things. The only thing is, if you want to get close to this, tempted maybe to go in here, but again then you're going to be very restricted in joining your claims up to your base. Some of your claims would have to be away from your base, which would mean shipping costs, shipping to, shipping from, fuel costs, potential for pirates, potential for magnetic storms. It's just not as efficient and more time consuming. There are benefits to it, but... Alright, so after we look at the black markets, maybe we look at prices. We haven't got random prices switched on at the moment, so prices are going to be standard. If random prices are switched on, which usually they are, you're going to have to consider the price of various resources. And they will impact, I think they will definitely impact on your settling choice. Because sometimes if iron, steel is $120, then maybe you want to go into, if there's a choice of settling spots, you maybe want to go into steel. But anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, I think. So let's identify some good settling spots. What you can do is cycle through scavenger map, so cycle through the carbon, see where the high carbon is. Two good spots there, medium, not so good. And back over to there, another medium over there. So there's two decent carbon areas, but water I think is going to be important. So realistically you're going to want, and silicon on this map is very important. So really you're going to want to be over this side of the map, just because this is where the water is and silicon. And here would be okay. Really, you're going to need a minimum of 4 to 5 carbon per turn to really make good use of it. If you don't get, I mean, in some cases you can manage with 3.5 or whatever, but the more carbon you get, the better it's going to be. So I would say that this area here, put your scavenger HQ somewhere here, just there, and then you can take these 2 carbon tiles, and you could take these 2 aluminium tiles. They will be difficult to transition later when aluminium will probably crash. So you may want to take either these 2, which could later on be turned into windmills, wind turbines, or maybe those 2. It'll really depend on what aluminium's doing, how much aluminium other layers take, because aluminium can go very cheap very quickly if people are bringing a lot of it in and selling it off. So maybe don't overbuild aluminium to begin with. The other thing with aluminium is, as soon as you settle, if you're not going to choose a close aluminium tile to your base, buy your aluminium. You only need 80 aluminium. Buy it in. It's going to be worthwhile. I would say that I buy aluminium almost every single time I found. Unless of course it's right next to my base. But the other advantage is that other players are not going to want to take aluminium to begin with, so they will go into, say, a scientific will go into 3 steel mill, buy in their aluminium. So if you settle first and buy the aluminium up, you can take it, you'll buy it cheap and make it expensive for them. The other thing is you could take a lot of aluminium, take as much as you can, spike the price, and if 2 or 3 players try to buy in aluminium, they'll spike the price. You can sell off your surplus and make a tidy profit almost immediately. So for this map, I would definitely say that this spot here is the best, because easy access to water. You'd want to grab this high water tile if you could. Secondary choice could be this one. You can make triangles. You'd have to make a triangle because you haven't got medium and a high adjacent. So this spot definitely would be my first choice. Depending on who's playing the game and the competition, you may want to take it early. Again, this spot could go for between, I don't know, minus 30,000 pounds worth of debt, or you might be able to snap it up a little bit cheaper. But this spot would definitely go quickly. You're right next to a geothermal as well, which you can get adjacent to your base if you get a couple of claims here. So you've got the possibility later on of getting superconductor and doubling the output of that. Superconductor, obviously one of the patents, which will be another video. So yep, this is the best spot on the map. You could possibly do a secondary scavenger over here, or like Mr. Robot has done down here. This will be a good little robot tile. You've got access to carbon later on for getting into electronics. You've got some aluminium, easy high aluminium over here if you wanted. Not so much access to water, but water possibly is a secondary importance to a robot. And you've also got a geothermal there if you wanted to take it, and possibility of getting some wind turbines over here or here if you possibly wanted to link them up later. And of course the all-important high-end tile. So get a mine down there, a couple of steel mills perhaps. So this good robots, but if you wanted to get robots, this would probably be the place to do it. Definitely be the place to do it. So yeah, that's a robot. Couple of scavengers. So really, I'd say there's only probably three viable spots. So that's this scavenger over here, and this robot. So otherwise, you're going to be struggling because there's not a whole lot of good stuff to bring in. So there we go. That's that map. But of course, glass, of course, is going to go expensive, and soon as people start buying it, Colony's going to be using it as well. And there's not a lot of silicon, so getting your hands on this silicon tile early would be a good move. How early you take it really is going to be up to you, but wouldn't recommend hanging about. Okay, I think this map has probably told us about as much as it can. Let's have a look at another map. Okay, another Chinese colony. So again, there's a lot. Let's have a quick look at the colony. Colony is food, water and glass again, pretty much standard. I should have put on random prices. Never mind, we'll put it on for the next one. Okay, let's have a little look around the map. Have a look at resources. Have a look at the black market. Black market looks quite nice. There's claims. If you're going to go for a scavenger or a robot or even a scientific, always nice to have briber claims, so you can buy a couple of extra claims in just to make up in case you're playing against an expansive player. Water, well, water's a little bit rare. There's only 2 high water tiles. Both of them are adjacent to medium water tiles, so that is good. You could possibly get away with just having 2 claims if you're a scavenger. You'd be bringing in about 5.5 water a second, which that should more or less run 6 life support claims. You will be a little water deficit, but not massively. Water, generally you can afford to buy a little bit of water from the market. So looking at the black market again, scavenger's going to be a good option for us, I think. Have a quick look around at the silicons. Not a lot of adjacent silicon, no adjacent silicon whatsoever. So immediately we're thinking that we want to be for silicon over this side of the map. And glass or silicon is going to be important later on. maybe not early game, but mid to late game, we're going to be wanting to be. We won't have the option to be in glass markets. Certainly, we're definitely going to be want to take a silicon claim, at least one. Well, we would want to get this high one. Definitely want to get that. So for me, I would probably want a scavenger in here. It's not ideal. There's no adjacent carbon, but there are 2 high carbons here. So you get that one, have your scavenger base somewhere in here, so you stomp some aluminium, which goes straight to your stockpile. Got a couple of high aluminium right next to your base there as well. A little bit tight. It is going to be a bit of a squeeze, so if there's EMPs on the market, then something to consider. You could well get hit, but then you probably get hit with an EMP anyway. It's more power surges that you have to think. If I get everything all close, then a power surge will rip through everything, and sometimes I've seen them go all the way around somebody's base. Not very often. So I think that there's a scientific spot down here. This is probably a strong spot. Probably quite a strong spot. My only concern with this is that the aluminium is a little bit away. There's not really any close aluminium. And of course, for glass, there's not a lot of glass. There's not a lot of silicon tiles there to put glass factories on. So you probably have to think about dragging the silicon into your base. If you were lucky enough to get that high silicon, you'd have to take the silicon all the way across the map for your scientific. So for me, that puts this scientific, even though it's a very good scientific spot, and you could bag some reasonably good water, it's probably slightly worse than my favourite scavenger over here. Although possibly it's a close run thing. Disadvantage having scavenger here is that you're going to be shipping your water in all this way. Another thing you could think about is possibly going for expansive up here, saying I don't want your water, I'm going to go for ice condensers. Ice condensers, you need to be a little bit smart with them. They're not going to run overnight when the sun goes down, so you want a water stockpile. Ice condensers have been buffed, well, compared to what they were quite a while ago, so they're a real viable alternative. So if you were last, or one of the last people to settle and all the other good spots had gone, you could possibly think about going expansive up here. Another thing to maybe look at is have a look at the off-world prices. We can see that food is going to be extremely strong to launch, so end game you're going to want to be in food. You might want to be in fuel as well, depending on how the random increases go. They will go up randomly, so we might see fuel become quite strong. Generally, off-world launches are usually always life support. Sometimes chemicals are strong, sometimes electronics are strong. But generally, food, oxygen, and fuel are the strong ones. So another thing maybe to consider if you've got time, which usually you don't, is to have a quick peek at the off-world, see if you need to be in life support at the end. Again, this could be a strong robot spot. Got a easy aluminium to get to. You've got a nice strong iron tile to support your steel production. So you've got a good carbon there as well later on if you wanted. Possibility for wind turbines around the edges here. So this would be a good robot spot. Probably third, maybe second or third on the list, depending on if you like playing robot or not. I think everybody's got their favourite HQ types, and robot isn't one of my favourites. You can do a lot of good work with robots, but there's quite a few robot spots around. So you're not, I mean, this map you could, if you didn't get this spot here, or you weren't prepared to pay enough debt for it, then there are options. There's always options. Wherever you've got steel patches, iron patches, you've got a good robot spot that you could get. And water's not amazing, but it's not terrible. You could get a couple of water here if you're robots, which would at least let you run a triangle of either fuel and O2 reactors or food. Not brilliant, but not the worst. So, but I would say, to sum up, even though there's no adjacent carbon here, I would be very keen to take this spot for a scavenger, only really because we can get easy access to some of these silicons and we can move into glass and maybe early mid-game. And of course there's a couple of waters here. If we didn't get this high water, then there's the possibility of getting one of these mediums and tagging it with a low. Not great again, but not terrible at all. So there we go. This secondary spot possibly would be scientific down in here. You'd have to be quick to your upgrades though, because you'd want to be claiming some of the, at least these two tiles probably, just to get them in the bank, because they are going to be popular tiles and somebody will probably come along and steal them. Again, the disadvantage down here is that you're a long way from aluminium, you're a long way from silicon, but depending on what life support is doing, you've got a few good triangles. You've got two triangles here that you could use, a couple of good patches. So number one spot I think would be scavenger here, possibly scientific second here, and then robots or expansive. Expansive would need a bit of work here. You'd have to be a bit smart about it to get your water in, but it wouldn't be too terrible. Good. Let's move on and have a look at one more map, and I shall give you my opinion on it. So, looking at the colony again, standard like we've seen every other time, 1 unit of glass, food, oxygen and water. Again, it's not going to impact prices massively, but it will keep the price of glass ticking up. Unless somebody moves heavily into glass, then there's always going to be pressure on the glass. So looking around the map, looking at the black market, there's nukes around. So as there are nukes, scavenger doesn't look as appealing as it did. Carbon, especially higher medium carbons, are very vulnerable to nuclear weapons, unsurprisingly. And the last thing you want to be done is stuck with a claim that you can't really get out of because it's been nuked. It can be mitigated if you have a large patch of carbon that you can settle very near to. In that case, you can just rotate your claims around, start off on the good carbon. If it gets nuked, you can repurpose that tile to a claim, either put a farm on it, a reactor, glass, whatever you want to put on it, you can put on it. So long as you've got an alternative carbon that you can get near to your base. Last thing you want to be doing is buying claims in to replace nuked carbon. And looking at resources, 2 high carbon side by side, very appealing. That would be, both of these would be good to take. But again, we're looking at water. There's only 1 high water. The mediums are a bit patchy. So there's 2 good water patches really. I mean, if you had slant drilling, possibly. Thing is, at higher levels, people are going to start nuking your water. Especially if they're robot players or whatever, or they've got goon squads down on their water. Nuking out water is very popular, and rightly so. Very rightly so, because a lot of people get into life supports, and if you can maybe get your own water somehow, or even if you're a robot, then you can cause havoc by nuking everybody else's. I mean, 3 or 4 nukes on this map and water is going to be scarce and very hard to come by. So looking at this map, nice patches of silicon down here. Looking around, there's no easy iron. Oh, there's some iron over here. Use the possibility, if you've got 4 players, you could go for robots and go straight into a silicon tile, a high silicon, and then straight into a couple of solar panels. generally called power robots. It's a risky play, more of a high-level player start off. Some players swear by it, especially as the price of power will peak early in the game. You make good money off your power, you buy in your steel. The only thing is you can't run any debt because all your cash is going to be coming from power, so as soon as you take any debt on, you're not making any money, you're not getting any money in to upgrade to buy your steel in. There's quite a few good patches of iron about, various possibilities. Possibly one of the best spots on here, given that there's nuclear weapons to be had, is scientific in here. You've got a triangle for your steel, you've got a geothermal that could be adjacent to your base, and you've also got 5 water tiles here that you could put 3 farms, 2 reactors, 3 reactors, 2 farms. This is probably, in my opinion, this particular map, the best spot. I would probably try to take scientific here, see if I could take it reasonably quickly as well, maybe 25k's worth of debt, just so that I can secure this spot for myself. Other alternatives, some kind of scavenger. There's not a huge amount of room in this crater. I probably wouldn't. You'd probably have to go here. Like these tiles here, so you're right next to these 2 carbons. Again, you're vulnerable to nukes, and there's not a huge amount of water near to you, so you'd be shipping in water. I mean, really, this is probably a robot map, given the water resources. Certainly, if you didn't, that'd be the first spot to go. Then maybe some kind of expansive somewhere, but again, the iron's a long way away from everything else. We'd probably see a robot come down, probably here, maybe a robot there. Power robot spots would probably go depending on who was playing the game. That would be depending on the price of power as well. That would probably be the last claim to go, and they would hope that this area here would stay clear so they could bring their iron in later. Depending if they wanted to go for iron, of course. And that's, I think, it sums that map up about right. 7 geothermal, so power's not going to be too bad. So yeah, scavenger in here, I think. Maybe the second choice, but again, it's a long way from everything else, and the nukes on the table, possibly it wouldn't go. Possibility of going scavenger in here, but you're even more vulnerable to nukes there. Stomp this aluminium, depending on the price of aluminium, might be quite good play, but again, bringing your water in is going to be expensive. You need to be reasonably near to water, otherwise you're going to have to take or try to get to teleportation. And you're putting yourself under a lot of pressure if you're taking a spot thinking I'll get a teleportation later, because it's going to cost you opportunity costs and money costs to actually research, build a patent lab first and then research teleportation. And other players may get it first, it may come up for auction and you get outbid on it, because it can be very profitable to take, or it can be very expensive to buy teleportation from an auction if somebody else wants it. So yeah, things to be aware of. So scientific there's the best spot, possibly a second, probably robot over here maybe is the second, maybe some kind of scavenger either here or here in this area. Again, difficult water. The other thing is maybe an expansive here perhaps, because then you could maybe put your steel mills, put your expansive here, take that aluminium, couple of steel there to secure your water for later, and hope you can, well, if scientific took that, then you'd be in big trouble, because you'd be a long way to bring your iron in. Again, if you want a quick start, you don't want to be bringing your iron or your carbon in from too far away, because that's going to slow down your upgrades. and you want to get upgrading as quick as possible. So this scientific spot would probably go for a lot of money. And then, well, there's no obvious excellent second spot, so good luck. Not the easiest to map, this one. Okay, we'll take a look at one more map. Okay, we've got rocky terrain, and we've got canyons and dry ice. It's going to be interesting. Another not so great map. Again, it's a European colony, so it's going to be using chemicals, water, so really not really interested in the colony this turn. Claims, look at the black market, adrenaline boosts, nukes, unfortunately. So let's just whip down our expansive there. What have we got? Resources. Quite a few high waters, a couple of patches. Okay, whenever you settle, you should be able to take some kind of water patch, quite well spread about, so water's not too important. This map, we could have access to it whenever we wanted. Silicon, couple of silicon patches around. I'm seeing there. Silicon's not that important for this map anyway. Okay, there doesn't seem to be an obvious scientific spot. Possibly you could make a scientific work in here. Steel wouldn't be in a triangle, but you could still get 3 steel mills attached. That's a reasonably good scientific spot there. Not ideal, but reasonable. 2 adjacent geothermals, who, if you can get your hands on these 2 and keep them up and running, you're going to be making a lot of power. Geothermals together are going to get adjacencies, so get 2 down, you'll kill the power price, but also you'll have a huge amount of power to do whatever you liked with. I like to play scavenger, so I would try somehow to get this spot here working. High water, high carbon, high aluminium, a good spot, but again, everything's not going to be connected to our base. It's going to be quite far away. Not ideal. Being a canyon map, we've got lots of ridges and holes and things, so realistically, if you go over here, you're going to be on your own. There's not a lot of other settling spots to be had. I would probably have to say that you'd have to put your scavenger here. You're not going to have too many triangles, unfortunately, but you would have access to dry ice, which is always good. You probably get 2 triangles out of here. So it's definitely not ideal, but good access to carbon, good access to aluminium. This aluminium here is you could later on transition those 2 into some very, very nice wind turbines. Couple of good water pumps here. You're not going to get a huge amount of water, but you'd have enough to make something work. So that's a that's a reasonable scavenger spot, but there are limitations to it, and it's important to recognise the limitations quickly. Nukes again, so you could get into trouble, but if you manage to get through the early game without getting nuked, you can always go into dry ice later on. So that's a fair scavenger spot. Not excellent by any means, but reasonable. Looking around, probably the second, or maybe equal first. Yeah, probably equal first would be scientific. There are magnetic storms available, so if you do ship things in from a long way, like your glass, if you put glass over here and shipped it in, you run the risk of it being stormed and smashed. So it's underused, magnetic storms, but as a scientific player, if you're shipping expensive secondary products such as chemicals, glass, electronics, Even food and life support, you don't want it to be shot down with magnetic storms. Something to think about. Probably in the vast majority of games, not going to be an option, but possible. And as a robot spot down here, this would make a reasonably good robot spot somewhere in here. One scientific spot here, scavenger that we already saw, and the last one, well, probably some kind of robot here maybe. Need to have access to dry ice. You could try and you get one of these at least. Maybe just deny somebody getting two of them. Really depends what you want to take, what you want to deny to your opponents. Possibly this would be a robot spot, maybe third or fourth on the list. So I like scavenger, as I said, so my preferred location would be over here, but I wouldn't be under any, I would be having to watch it quite carefully because there's not many triangles vulnerable to nukes, but I try it because you've got adrenaline boosts, you've got a good black market, a reasonably good black market here for a scavenger. So my preferred would be here for scavenger. If I couldn't get that, I'd probably go somewhere here for scientific. Because you've got this little patch here you could use as well. Not brilliant, but any port in a storm. And I'd probably try to get one of these geothermals as well. The other one could be a robot down here somewhere, probably in this area. And if you were unlucky enough to be fourth, well, you might have to have this spot. Or this spot, really depends what goes on. So there we go, there are my thoughts on picking a spot for your settle in. I hope you found it informative. Any comments or anything, please do stick them in the comment section. More than happy to answer any questions. If you want me to explain something in a little more detail, more than happy to help. Good, thank you very much for watching. If you like my video, please do subscribe, because I'm sure I'm going to put a few more up in the near future. Thank you, bye bye.